Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And I am grateful for that world because were it not for one man and one decision, all made shortly before I was even born, that world never would have existed. In fact, chances are, if you're watching this video right now and are of a certain age, your world wouldn't exist either. You, your family, and everything you hold dear. It would have all been destroyed were it not for that one man and the fateful decision he made. That man's name is Stanislav Petrov. And on September 26, 1983, what he did in a moment of immense tension and stress saved the world. And in celebration of that act, I'm making this video and I've made sure to post it on September 26th. Because Stanislav Petrov's story deserves to be told. Moreover, it deserves to be honored and celebrated. Now, to set the stage, I need to provide some personal details that I hope will give weight to that story. You see, in September of 1983, I was not born yet, but I was already well on my way. My parents had set up shop in a nice townhouse on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. My mother actually worked within the district, and my father frequently worked around the area as well. I even looked up the old address of the townhouse we used to live in, and it's still there. And it's less than 15 miles from downtown DC. But what made that fateful day, September 26, 1983, so meaningful had little to do with the events in Washington, D.C. What made this day so meaningful all unfolded within a bunker a world away in the former Soviet Union. And this is where the fate of the world came to rest on his shoulders. Now, at the time, Petrov was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Force. And he was regularly tasked with manning the Serpukhov 15 bunker near Moscow. In terms of Soviet defense strategy and protocols, his role in that bunker was very important. That bunker was tasked with monitoring Soviet airspace to detect an incoming nuclear attack. And should they ever detect such an attack, it was their duty to report it to the Soviet High Command, thereby allowing for a proper response. That response, however, entailed a full-on nuclear war. And at the time, there were enough nuclear weapons on both sides of the Iron Curtain to effectively end civilization, if not the entire human race. And it certainly didn't help that during the early 1980s, the Cold War was heating up. Newly elected President Ronald Reagan had publicly called the Soviet Union an evil empire. And things got only more tense on September 1st, 1983, when a Soviet fighter jet shot down a Korean airliner, killing all 269 passengers on board. Things were very tense, more so than usual for the Cold War. But it all came to a head on September 26th, 1983. Because that's when, in the middle of Petrov's shift, the alarms at the Serpukhov 15 bunker began going off. And they were all telling everyone on hand the same thing. Multiple inbound ICBMs were heading their way. It seems like the Americans had really done it. Their new movie star president had launched a full-scale nuclear attack to wipe out the evil empire, as he called it. Call it a nightmare scenario all you want. But no amount of mask-wielding killers, invading aliens, or shadow-dwelling monsters can do justice to this kind of real-world horror. Now just take a moment to think about how the men in that bunker felt. For all they knew, their country and everyone they loved was about to die in a nuclear inferno. And it was the policy of the Soviet Union to respond to any nuclear attack with a devastating retaliation, as specified in the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. This is where Stanislav Petrov's roles and responsibilities come in. Because, being the officer on duty, it was his job to inform the Soviet High Command of this threat. Every last bit of his military training demanded that he inform his superiors. From there, they would prepare for a retaliation, which would likely entail a massive nuclear strike that would destroy the United States, Western Europe, and much, much more in the aftermath. All Mr. Petrov had to do was make one call, and that would have been it. That would have ended the world as we knew it. And I, Jack Fisher, never would have existed. I know for a fact that my parents were in and around DC that day. Had the Soviets retaliated, Washington, D.C. would have been their top target, and there would have been no way for my parents to escape the blast. And if the worst truly came to pass on that day, my parents, many of my aunts and uncles, my grandparents on my father's side, they all would have died along with so many others. Again, just think about this predicament for a second. Even if you or your family didn't live in a major city at the time, just appreciate the situation that this man found himself in. In that moment on September 26, 1983, the fate of the world and billions of lives lay on the shoulders of Stanislav Petrov. If he did what he was trained to do, then the world as we knew it would have ended. However, in that monumentally stressful moment, Petrov did not make the call. Instead, he made the fateful decision that ultimately saved my life, the world, and so much more. And he did it by not following the protocol that he'd been trained to follow. Now keep in mind, this is the Soviet Union. They are not known for tolerating disobedience. But Petrov, with his duty and the weight of the situation bearing down on him, believed that this incident was a false alarm. And he even had good reason for believing this. The systems were only detecting several missiles. That was a pretty small attack, given the sheer size of America's nuclear arsenal. He reasoned that if Americans really wanted to wipe out the Soviet Union, they definitely would have attacked with much more. Still, his training required him to inform his superiors. And on top of that, he only had 15 minutes to act because that's how long it took for a detectable missile to reach its target. So yeah, in the same time it takes to watch an episode of Robot Chicken, Stanislav Petrov had to make a decision that would have determined the fate of billions of lives. The fact that no nuclear bombs went off that day, the fact that I'm here right now making this video, and the fact that billions of people didn't die in a nuclear fire, it's all proof that Petrov made the right decision in that moment. And in the days that followed, it was in fact determined that the false alarm was caused by a rare alignment of sunlight and high-altitude clouds, coupled with the erratic orbits of Soviet satellites. Now that may seem trivial now, but remember, these were very tense times during the Cold War. This incident could have easily been a perfect storm of fear, tension, and overreaction. One wrong move, one single glitch, one misguided decision, and that would be it. We would all find ourselves in the midst of a nuclear war entirely by accident, and nobody would have been left on this planet to admit that they screwed up. But it's because of Stanislav Petrov's decision that day, his decision not to follow protocol and trust his instinct, that we all avoided such a fate. Because of that decision, I was born shortly after, and my world exists now for me to share with everyone. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Sadly, despite his heroic decision, Stanislav Petrov received no medal, commendation, or recognition for his decision. In the end, he just got a pat on the back, which was the most anyone could hope for in the Soviet Union at that time. This man literally saved the world, but his actions were quickly forgotten, lost in the decades-long mess that was the Cold War. And it really wasn't until 2004 that Petrov began getting recognized for his actions that day. But by then, the weight of that moment had lost its place in the public consciousness. The mere fact that I have to make a video about this, personally thanking him for saving my life and so many others, it shows just how few are aware of this man and what he did on that fateful day. Now, it's even harder to honor his actions because in May 2017, Stanislav Petrov passed away at the age of 77. His death was not widely reported, It barely got any mention in any major news outlets in America or in Russia. So this man who saved billions of lives, including my own, he isn't even alive anymore to appreciate. Now, in his later years, Petrov lived a quiet, unremarkable life. He also never considered himself a hero. He was just the right man in the right place to make the right decision during very tense times. But in doing so, he saved billions of lives and preserved the future of humanity on this planet. It is impossible to overstate the importance of the decision that Stanislav Petrov made on September 26, 1983. There are those who brag that they saved the world or are arrogant enough to think that they can. But Stanislav Petrov didn't need to brag about it because he actually did it. He actually saved this world, and most people will never know what he did. So on this day, a day which many like me are alive because of Stanislav Petrov, let's take a moment to honor and appreciate what he did. By trusting his instinct and his humanity, by hesitating to make a decision that he knew would destroy the world as he knew it, Petrov proved just how heroic a person can be during a time of such great distress. So, from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of all those who are alive because of his decision that day, thank you, Mr. Petrov. Thank you for doing the right thing under such terrible circumstances. Rest in peace knowing that you saved my life and that of so many others. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.